Hey, how's everybody? My name is Jason Jones. Gosh, it's good to see you guys. Appreciate you guys having me. A lady had guided me in when I first showed up. Would you raise your hand? Where are you at? Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. You were so nice. I would have gotten lost. Well, I have a story to share with you today. But first, I just want to acknowledge how the baseball team looks stellar. Oh man, you guys are doing it. You guys look real. Man, that's professionalism at its finest right there. You guys look better than me when I was your age. Before I begin my story, I wanted to kind of share a little backstory. It's a part that's really cool to me. Somehow, my parents were going to church in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and Donnie's parents were going to the same church there, Timberlane Baptist Church there, and man, I just thought that was so cool before I was born. And then next thing I know, I'm hearing stories later on in life about how my mother possibly changed Donnie's diaper and stuff, and I was like, what? But that's more of a here nor there. But anyway, so Donnie asked me to share with you a little bit of my story, and I have some notes. I'm out of practice. Hopefully, you guys will be gracious enough to bear with me. So, my life in the beginning really revolved around my family, and they raised me in church, and pretty much just doing what I wanted to do, and being raised at a very early age in church, being born again, baptized there out of Temple Baptist Church in Little Rock. Terry Kimbrough was our associate pastor, and some of you even know Brother Jameson. And so he was our pastor there, and just a real awesome time for me growing up in a church there. Donnie was our youth pastor, and so just amazing time. We traveled when I was a teen. We traveled all over the United States, wherever anyone would have us, carrying the message to other churches or to people and singing about Jesus. It was an impressionable time for me, and I got to it was the first time I'd ever had somebody really spend time, those men, pouring life into me, a lot like where you are now. You know, you guys are going to school, you think you have a goal, God may fit somewhere in there, and you're just trying to work things out. Well, that was me. And so, at one point in the youth group, we had reached 250 plus people. It was mind-blowing. I mean, I had more friends than I could count. It was great. And it was just a fantastic time. The best time I've ever had in ministry, and I was exposed to that. It was a glorious time. And so, as we're going along the trips, touring, Florida, Colorado, in a lull, a tragedy struck us that affected me, that I would carry with me to this day. And it was the first time I'd ever had a loss. And it was Brittany Parrish, Donnie's daughter. The first time I'd ever had an experience where trauma had come in, and I didn't really know how to process that. You know, stuff would happen and stuff, and you'd circle around your friends for guidance, but I didn't really do that at the time, and I didn't know how to process that. A few years would go by, and I'd fall away from church, youth group, and stuff, doing my own thing, and I knew I wanted to do something in music because I had that impression from early on, and so I set out and embarked on, I'm going to be in the music industry. Didn't know what I was going to do, but I was going to do something. And somehow it led me into Nashville, where I am at Castle Rock Studios in Franklin, Tennessee, and a band called DC Talk was there. And somehow I'm friends with all three of them. And we're recording a song called Jesus Freak. What an experience. It was just fun. Had no idea the impact that song would make to the world. Well, it ended up being the largest selling gospel album of all time. And I ended up just blowing that off and left and said, I'm actually going to manage a band. And I came back to Little Rock and I met a guy named Ben Moody. Ben and I wanted to sign. He was a teenager, just an early teen at the time, but one of the most talented people I'd ever seen play piano, guitar, or whatever. And yeah, we were going to sign a female artist. The first female artist we had, after developing her for about 2 months, she decided to move away to California. We were devastated. We didn't know what to do. And so a month later, I get a call from that same woman, and she said, "Hey, I am a casting director for a movie. You want to be in it?" And I said, "What movie?" And she said, "Well, directed by James Cameron." And my ears perked up, and I was like, "Oh, James Cameron, okay, he did The Terminator, he did The Abyss. This is going to be awesome. I'm a sci-fi buff, I get it." And so I said, "But what's the name?" And she said, "The Titanic." I was just so devastated, man. I was let down. I was like, Titanic sounds so boring. How can the man that did the Terminator movies do a movie called Titanic? And so I said, "How much will I be getting paid?" She shot back an amount, and I said, "I'll be there in a month." And so for the next 10 months, I embarked on, shooting and filming and being in the movie The Titanic. Some of you may remember Kate and Leo running away from Cal's assistant at the time where they're running into the elevator. Well, the guy who opens up the elevator doors who had hair then, that was me. So I had a speaking line and was devastated that they edited it out. Can you believe that? Man. So after the movie was done, I'm like, okay, I gotta get in touch with Ben Moody. I'm going to go back to Little Rock, and we're going to start back and sign this female artist. And so I wasn't back too long here in Little Rock, and Ben calls me up and says, "Hey, I got the woman." He said, I got the girl, actually. And so she wasn't a woman yet. Her name was Amy Lee. And I said, okay. I said, "Well, what does she sound like?" He said, "I got it." He brought over a cassette deck. Just, the little square things that it was a cassette. It had a condenser mic. It was just it was the worst setup you could ever hear. And then I heard, when he pressed play, I heard this voice come out, and it was so robust. And I was like, this is amazing. Ben said, "Hey, can you sign us? What do you think?" I didn't know what I was doing, actually. But I said yes. And so we began developing for 2 years with a band called Evanescence. Somehow, I'm the manager. And so then later on brought in David Hodges, who was a solo artist of mine. He now writes for Kelly Clarkson. And just here is us, just 3 guys that are, and lady, who are developing music, and they're all in a 10-mile radius of my house. We had no idea what the future was going to hold. So, something happened that I was had just about derailed us. We were in talks with record companies after we had developed and stuff. We were getting figures that were astronomical. It was really a kind of a euphoric moment where Atlantic's involved, Columbia Records involved, and somehow I'm just holding things up and really hadn't got into too much drugs and alcohol. You guys don't know anything about that, would you? So it's really prevalent in that world. I mean, it's the norm. And so, but then I had a call from Ben, and he said, hey, man, I was out in L.A. I was pushing them to Gary Gersh, a guy who signed Nirvana, and was having a meeting at Geffen Records and stuff. And then in the middle of that, I get a call. Ben said, hey, your brother is in trouble. We think you need to come back. And I said, what? I said, no, he's fine, man. They said, no, you need to call your parents. Your brother has been charged with murder. Floored me. I had no idea. I was angry. I didn't know why God had put me in that situation, you know. And a lot of things had come back. There was a lot of pain and stuff. Eventually, I came back, saw my parents, and I was like, I can't be involved in this. It's too much. I'm on the precipice of something bigger. The band, then at the time, as it hit Little Rock News that my brother and all of that whole ordeal, that my brother was charged with murder, it was on the news, the band started to distance themselves. They said, this is too much. This is affecting how we look and what maybe the record companies will think. So I was like, no, I'm going to double down and I'm going to push on. We can do this. And as I did, I'd actually turned to alcohol, drugs, but it's very subtle. Some of you probably take Adderall. Hey, I need it for class, right? I have an attention deficit disorder, hyperactivity. It's real. Well, I went that route. And so, those 3 amphetamines were pumping in my body constantly to where I'd have the euphoric feeling of hair standing up on my arms and stuff. There was like 3 of me working every day. I went through 12 years of darkness. We would end up signing away to wind up. I left Evanescence. It was they wanted me to go. I wanted to go. I had co-produced some of their earlier work, all of their earlier work, and I went into actually something that made me feel good, which is amphetamines. And I was spiritually sick. And I was hurt by the loss of my brother. I ended up living a Machiavellian lifestyle. I was real malevolent. I would end up touring with MTV Road Rules, Real World. I would end up putting myself through school after the signing of Evanescence. Went to a huge music school. We had to have 90% attendance, believe it or not. We had actually 4-hour lectures, sometimes twice a day with 2-hour labs behind them, and we went it all 24 hours of the day because it was music-oriented. The show must go on. That's how it was. So if you guys are going to school and you have anything less than that, you have it easy. You know what I'm saying? Who has 2, 4, 8, 9, 10-hour classes? Back to back. Here. No one? How long are y'all's labs? Are they 2 or 3? 3? That's cool. How long are lectures? Really? Man. All right. That's good. That's good. Okay. My point is I was pushing myself just probably a little too much to where it was unhealthy, horribly unhealthy. I was putting things in my body that I didn't need to be putting in my body. So left the music school there in Winter Park, Florida, and I set out and I started touring around, and I became fairly good at what I did, which is live audio shows. I toured with Dwight Yoakam, R. Kelly, would go on to do music for some of the best bands in the world. If you've ever heard of Crystal Method, I'm a little dated, forgive me, but PM Dawn, anyone? No? Sister Hazel, Tommy Lee, Mute Math, a little more current. So, but anyway, I had gone so far down the rabbit hole, I had no way of being able to come out. Would end up getting kicked off of a few tours because I was so out there. I was becoming hard to work with. I always wanted my way. And the whole Evanescence blew up, and I was worth, weirdly, $55 million. I had a 2-year, 3-year, and 4-year infringement right they had committed against me. So what do you do when that happens and you're on drugs and you have funds that are non-exhaustible? What do you do? What would you do? Would you keep doing them? Because you have that money. No one can tell you what to do, right? Yeah. Man, that is exactly what I did. I kept doing it. Somehow in 2008, a music attorney came to me. I was doing a show in Little Rock. A music attorney came from Oklahoma, and he wound up in the booth, and I told this guy to go away, and he said, "How's Evanescence?" And I was like, crap, he knows who I am. And so I was like, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm a publishing attorney." And I knew then he was trying to hint at maybe I had some rights. And I knew I had rights. So I called the guy, and I got the attorney who took down Suge Knight. Y'all ever heard that name? Y'all ever heard these? All right, okay. So I was flown out to LA to check on these music rights, and that's what totaled over $55 million. And I was coming down from amphetamines. I even had them in my luggage and went through the whole system of that was how insane. I can't believe I wasn't caught. I should be in jail or dead by then. But somehow God had kept me alive. So, shared with him, hey, this is when I paid for the font for Evanescence. I owned the name. I made it tangible. This was recorded on my material, My Immortal. They just re-recorded it. I owned the actual music. And so that's where it led to. Now, 2 months later, after I'm back home, I get a call. I was devastated. I missed a 2-year, 3-year, and 4-year infringement right. Thank God. Because I would have kept doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, but never getting. I was insane. Never getting the results that I wanted. And so I was here in Conway at the time. I was at a drug runner's house. And the same thing somehow was happening over and over again. And God allowed me to have a moment of clarity. And I can't explain it. It was a miracle. But for some reason, I'd been offered help so many times before for my drug addiction. And that moment, I asked, look, if there's a lady running drugs and that's all, like, you know, you're itching and you're moving around, and it's the epitome of everything that you imagine that a drug person locked in that world would be. And then all of a sudden you have this guy go, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. Will you pray with me? Can you imagine the reaction of just someone that's on drugs? And you know what? Weirdly, she said, yeah. And so we got down on the coffee table of her living room and prayed, and I asked God to help me that I was scared I was going to go into treatment. I don't know how I did that. Went back to Little Rock. That was on December the 8th, 2008. I ended up getting a mentor, ended up working the 12 steps, and for the last 10 years, working through the trauma that had happened. A lot of you are going through some situations that your closest friends, the people that you're sitting by, don't even know about. I don't recommend that. I need help. I need others. Recently, I'd gotten married in sobriety and everything, and I went through something where my wife was using. Wouldn't stop. My mentor said, you might have to leave because you could end up in that world. And I know if I go back, I'll die. So I reached out to Donnie. I reached out to a few men, Keith Medlock and Brother Drew Klein, and I started to ask, like what's going on? What do I do? And there was this shift that happened, and I had to leave my wife. Ended up coming back to Little Rock. We had lived in another state. Came back to Little Rock, and then God offered me a position there at Harvest, and offered me a position with Sunlight, Sober Living Homes. I'd never even thought about sharing with others my story, or with you, or being on stage. And Sunlight had given me that opportunity, but I'd had instances where things had happened in my life that, whether death, loss, or things that I'd gotten into that I couldn't get out of, maybe some other people were like me. Maybe you're like me. You didn't know what to do. And so Donnie had mentioned that we're only as sick as our secrets. Well, man, I had a bunch of them. And then I got a sponsor or a mentor or a pastor, and I shared with them just what was going on. I couldn't carry that stuff alone. What do I do? What's my next step? How do I get through this? And just by talking about it, it dispels so much of the power that it has, because where I was at was locked away. And believe me, in that space, it's cunning, baffling, and way more powerful than you, and it will destroy you. Why God kept me alive? It's really a miracle. It's just like, why did God place my parents and his parents at the same church, and why I've been so close? I mean, we're not best friends, but he's been a leader in my life and poured into my life. And I get to now reflect, and weirdly, I'm doing the same thing. I'm pointing others to him. That's it. Turning my will and my life over to the care of him daily. So, look, drugs, amphetamines, Adderall, which are 3 amphetamines together, Ritalin, all that stuff. I rationalized and justified all day long about that stuff. It was coming from a doctor. They have my best interests. They did not. They didn't. At the end of the day, I had a voice in that. And then I was prescribed way too much. Ultimately, I just can't take that stuff anymore. I found a way to work around it. I found a way to live without it. And God uses me much more now than he ever did then. So I appreciate you guys letting me come in and share with you. I get to be, my brother being in prison, we get to be my family. We get to, a while back we wrote, got to be a part of bringing prison reform to Arkansas and stuff to allow people that are under the age who aren't adult not be sentenced to prison in life without a timed sentence and stuff. And so we've in sobriety I've been able to be a part of that and stuff. So I identify a lot with you today because if I was where you're at now, back then, I would have wanted, now I can say that, I would have wanted to reach out to somebody and say, hey, I don't know about this. I'm drinking too much. I'm depending on these things a little too much. How can I let go? And so the fear in my mind was becoming irrational. It wasn't. These people wanted to help me, and I could have reached out much earlier. So I just want to encourage you today that, hey, reach out to somebody, talk to somebody, talk to me. Afterwards, if you guys want, I can share with you where to start. No judgment. There are a lot of people actually in here who are covert, who are just like me. And with that, I'll close with this. So, when you turn your will and your life over to the care of God and you live open like that, yes, I had this addiction, you're helping others, God will do things for you that you can't really explain. And 3 years ago, I got cancer, and that was it, man. I was a dead man. The doctors were like, yeah, we don't know how long you had to live. And they took a 2-inch mass out of me of cancer. And so I was just like, gee whiz, after all this stuff, the highs and the lows, I mean, the records, the gold records that we had sold, or the movie, this is how it's going to be. And so, really, it's all God's. All of this, all your time here, all that time there, it's on screen, off screen, recorded or unrecorded. It's all His. He's the Logos. It all fits together. So what was my legacy really going to be? What did I really do? Titanic, that's old hat. It was the largest movie ever? Yeah, well, not anymore. There's been 2, 3, 4, 5 others that have come after it. So what was my life going to amount to? In the beginning, well, after the chemo, I'll say, God allowed me to go in remission, and so I'm 3 years into remission. I'm still blown away. I'm still blown away. Still blown away. I'm still grateful. In the beginning, my life revolved around family, church, and what I wanted to do. But now, I share my experience, strength, and hope to others in recovery, mentoring and pointing them back to Him, because I had men and women who did that for me. Thank you, Brother Kimbrough, Brother Donnie, for doing that. Brother Jameson. I carry that. I carry their stories and what they did for me with me now, and I'm able to reflect and think more, because living the life on drugs wasn't thinking about what's really important. Like, how can God use me? What can God do through me? What matters? I was really good at investing into people, but for the wrong reasons. Make sense? Just because someone's investing to you at this college because you think they want your money, that is not it. It's expensive to take care of us. They love you. And it isn't just because they're getting a paycheck. It's a calling. Anyway, I appreciate you guys let me share with you my story. That is all. That's it. That's all I got.